Think about Sudan, think about the Central African Republic, Rwanda. Somewhere where you have these remote villages, and if something happens to these villages and no one escapes, we'll never even know they were attacked. Too many of these conflicts happen, and the international community has no idea until the refugees are able to escape the conflict and travel for weeks to an international border. And what we want to do, and what we've been working on, is leveraging satellite imagery, aircraft imagery, and drone imagery. We think of it in terms of a continuum of collection. If you want to do something like measure the land cover of a park, you would use perhaps a drone, like a quadcopter drone. It provides very good detail, and it can cover maybe a square kilometer. If you're looking up something higher, say looking at areas that have been destroyed by a fire, you would use a fixed-wing drone. Our fixed-wing drone can cover 12 square kilometers. So higher than that, you would use an aircraft. And finally, the highest level would be satellite imagery. It's coarse, but it covers the whole Earth.
GIS is Geographic Information Systems, and what it lends to is the spatial dimension. So pretty much everything has a location, whether it's a crime or a customer or a patient or a certain species of wildlife. You can see patterns occurring, which then helps people make decisions.
One of the exercises we do is, for example, to look at the distribution of particular plant species, such as creosote bush, and then determine from that imagery the XY coordinates for the positions from which they can figure out nearest neighbor distances and so on, spacings. And then they can take that same concept and apply it to other imagery from areas that they haven't been, perhaps tropical trees and things of this nature, where the relationships are more complex.
We collect data, we produce algorithms, and then we use it to address a research question. By partnering with discipline experts, such as environmental scientists at Keck Sciences, we're able to leverage that data and that analysis with their research questions. So our students are gaining interaction across the colleges. This could be Pomona Geology, this could be spatial statistics at Harvey Mudd College, or most frequently it's been environmental engineering at the Keck Sciences.
I see that this is kind of the wave of the future in terms of habitat analysis and assessment and monitoring the growth or even the loss of certain habitat as invasive species moves in or as just habitat gets lost. I see this as a critical piece of technology to analyze how this is working, and in the future we're going to be looking for operators and people can not just collect the data but analyze and interpret that data.
What I liked about the program was that it was actually doing GIS, but also information technology. GIS can be used in so many areas, not only, for example, in the basic ones that, for example, environmental analysis, but you can use it in business, marketing.
Biology, ecology, public health, survey mapping, law enforcement, fire. It's pretty much applicable in every different field. I mean, I cannot think of a field where you cannot apply it.
In the past few years, there's been a great expansion of interest in spatial aspects of ecology and environmental science. Many of these tropical forest sites in various parts of the world are quite remote, often poorly mapped and so on, so that the basis of a lot of the work requires that we make our own high-resolution detailed maps to begin with. The Firestone Reserve is about 12 years old now. It's owned by Pitzer College and was originally tropical forest, became a cattle pasture in the 1960s, then became a farm, and we acquired it 12 years ago, and the property is gradually being reforested to its original state. So beginning a year ago, we began flying drones at the Firestone Center to map in fine detail the nature of that regrowth of natural forest.
We took really good sampling both with a drone and with handheld GPS units to see what land cover was where. And then we use a Landsat constellation of sensors to go backwards in time and measure how fast the jungle regrows to different stages of growth. And what we found was that it took about 11 years for it to grow back from all pasture to what we would consider to be stage 4 regrowth. The research that we did has already been published. One of my students and I, an environmental sciences professor, Don McFarland, published it a few months ago.
In the more arid, flatter areas of the Mojave Desert, the dominant plant species are these small shrubs known as creosote bush. and superficially they appear to be just scattered randomly on the landscape. When they are mapped from above, it's apparent that the distribution of those bushes relative to one another is not random.
This represents the takeoff point. We would be sitting off to the side a little bit in a tent. The aircraft takes off to 120 meters above ground level and then flies to its first point. From there, it flies back and forth along the area that I set.
The issue for the creosote bush is, of course, shortage of water. So there's a benefit to the plants in spacing themselves out. And they achieve that by secreting toxic chemicals through their root systems, which diffuse out into the surrounding desert and inhibit the germination of seeds of the same species.
It's taking images so that they overlap about 60%. What that allows for is all these images, and it'll be several hundred, to be combined into one large orthomosaic.
Those kinds of patterns of dispersion tell us something about the biology of the organism. For drone work as well, the Mojave is particularly useful.
Working as part of the Claremont University Consortium has been amazing. There's expertise across all the colleges that we're benefiting from. And in fact, we're expanding our course offerings in drones because of the demand, both from the Claremont Graduate University and the Claremont Colleges.
To create your own experiments, gather your data, and also analyze it using GIS was pretty amazing. And it kind of opens the door for new research questions to see what this technology can be used for in the sciences. They're offering another segment to the course, and I'll probably be enrolling that in the fall.